Joins us now. Welcome back to the show, sir. Bill, good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Katie.
Great to see you. So your special is called The Decline and Fall of San Francisco. For those who haven't seen it yet, what's the biggest takeaway about the city's failures and your experience covering this? And does it also include, can this be applied to other cities we're seeing around the country?
Well, it's 40,000 drug addicts running wild in that town, doing exactly what they want to do, and the city of San Francisco is paying them to do it. So the rate of homelessness in San Francisco, which according to a Harvard study is about 85% drug addicted, they get money. They get debit cards in the name of humanity and compassion. And so they migrate to the city and have destroyed the inner core. It should never, ever be happening in the United States of America. This is horrible. And it's not compassion to allow people to kill themselves out on the street. That's not compassionate.
Yeah, we've seen policies in other cities that end that. Of course, domestic priorities for President Trump continue to be a focus. Bringing down the cost of living is something that he's been talking about. He's something he promised to do on the campaign trail, making America's streets safer. But of course, the attention on the war in Iran is taking up a lot of significant time in briefings, other public events. He's asked about this, of course, every time he does a gaggle with reporters. Today, the president suggested, and you talked about the European allies last time you were on the show, had some choice words that I agreed with. He suggested the European allies go get their own oil rather than relying on the U.S. to continue fighting battles in which they have an interest. What do you make of that statement? And is it time that the people who benefit the most from the Strait of Hormuz being open go in and get the oil?
Well, let's take a look at what's going to happen tomorrow night, because it'll be very interesting. President Trump, I've known him 35 years. He doesn't deliver bad news like this. So you can expect a positive speech tomorrow at 9 Eastern. Okay, he's not going to go in and say, hey, we screwed up. It isn't working out. We're not getting what we want. That's not happening. So the president will put a positive face on the situation. He'll run down his greatest hits, like he always does. You've heard it before, but he'll reiterate. And then he'll pivot. I'm not sure what the Iranians have agreed to, but they've agreed to something. So he's not going to go on and say, hey, I don't have anything. Thanks for watching, and now back to different strokes. He's not going to do that. So the Iranians agreed to something, but it'll probably leak out tomorrow, I'd say around mid-afternoon, what that something is. Now, as far as NATO is concerned, that alliance is shattered. It's like Humpty Dumpty. Nobody's going to put it back together again. It's over. The president expected some support, and NATO let him down. Particularly Spain. If it were me, I'd try to get Spain out of NATO because they denied landing rights to U.S. air power. And they have no reason to do that, Spain. But they did it out of spite because it's a socialist country. And they don't pay their dues like everybody else does for NATO. Why do we need Spain?
Yeah.
Why?
Bill, actually, on that question, on that issue, I want to follow up on that on a different topic, but related, because we're seeing this play out in real time, where our NATO allies are not allowing us to use our bases or their bases when we need them in a crisis. The president has made the case that this is why the United States should be in charge of Greenland. And then the NATO partners have come in and said, no, we reassure you that you'll be allowed to use spaces in Greenland whenever you need to, should there be a defensive cause against Russia and China in the Arctic. Does that fall apart now as a result of what we're seeing in the Middle East?
I don't expect to hear any of that.
Not tomorrow, but I mean generally, more broadly, not just tomorrow night.
I think the Greenland thing has receded because it just didn't make any sense. We can use Denmark's territory.
Can we?
Denmark's not going to object
I don't know.
to it.
We'll see.
Yeah, they're not going to object to it. They're dependent on us for their defense. And NATO is a very interesting animal because none of these countries coordinate with one another. They don't like each other. The Germans don't like the French don't like the Belgians. You know, it's on and on and on and on. I mean, it's not like this is one block. And they all don't like President Trump.
Well, last time you said the Germans were the worst.
Prime Minister,
so
they are the worst because we are dependent upon them because they're so close to Putin. And they don't care. Look, when you have a threat that could blow up Europe, and I know people don't want to believe it. I wrote a message of the day. It'll be on BillO'Reilly.com tomorrow morning. People believe what they want to believe, Katie. And they don't want to believe that Iran is capable of launching a nuke. They don't want to believe it. And they do want to believe that Trump's the devil. So that's what they do. There's no rationality here, but just in a cautious realm. Why wouldn't you back the USA in this? We're doing all the heavy lifting along with Israel. You're not doing anything.
And we're winning.
Why wouldn't you back us?
Right.
Because the more you back us, the quicker it's over. And the quicker the gas prices come down, which I think the president will emphasize tomorrow, because his problem is the U.S. voter.
Yeah.
And the U.S. voter, you know, look, it's a 50-50 split, I think, among people who hate Trump and among people who like him. And the midterms loom. So I think that he's going to wrap that bow up. But he has to do it before he goes to China. Remember, he's supposed to visit Beijing in the middle of April. And the Chinese are big in this. You don't hear from them. But they're big in this whole thing because they need that oil coming through Hormuz. China gets 80% of its oil from the Gulf. And they can't have it closed down. And that's a big factor.
Yeah, on the issue of China, there's been a lot of talk, of course, about getting the Strait of Hormuz open. There's been a lot of hand-wringing in the media about this being a major crisis. The president thinks it is, obviously. However, when you look at it, it seems the people who benefit the least from it being closed are the Iranians and China, on top of China's oil getting cut off and the discounts taken away from the Venezuela raid with Maduro. So is this actually more beneficial to the U.S. strategy in squeezing the regime into a deal than we would think given the media coverage?
I think in the end it'll come down to the mullahs can stay there and the CIA will continue to undermine them, hoping that the Persian people throw them out, as they did with the Shah in 1979. And in return for them staying there, whoever they are, and how many of them left, they'll open the straits. I think that's probably going to be the essence of the deal. And then off that comes lower gas prices for the world. We won. We took them out. They're evil. And no nukes. The no nukes have got to be in the forefront of any deal. Have to be.
Yeah. Well, we've heard the president, you mentioned the midterms, say that, look, politics are, of course, important. Polling is important. But sometimes you have to do the right thing, regardless of what the popularity of it is. So maybe he'll address that tomorrow night. I want to switch gears before we let you go, Bill. In your special, you highlight the issue of drug abuse. Prescription medications, of course, were a factor in Tiger Woods' accident and DUI arrest last week. What do you make of this latest situation and the broader problem in America we have with this issue?
Well, Tiger Woods is a drug addict. He admitted it tonight. He's going to rehab, and I hope, and I would encourage every American to hope that he gets well, because he's a danger to himself and others. So we live in a culture that celebrates the destruction of the famous, which is one of the bad things about the United States. We love to see famous people get taken down. I don't know what that mentality is, but I'm hoping that Mr. Woods cleans it up. As far as the other addiction problem that we have, there's only one solution, and that is therapeutic areas where drug addicts who are on the street, not under supervision, are forced, mandatory, to go there for their own good. You know, there are narcotics now that block opiate addiction. They block it. So you don't have to do withdrawal. You don't do that. So people in San Francisco wanted to be there. They want to kill themselves. I talked to them. They don't care whether they live or die. Did you know that the city of San Francisco spends more than $100,000 on each of these homeless people a year?
So what do you do with
You know
them,
how
Bill,
many
if they
die?
don't care if they live or die? I mean, what is the state supposed to do, given the homelessness industrial complex and all the tax money that's gone towards this issue? And it's gotten worse, not better.
Money. Yeah, because they knew it in the wrong way. You take that money, you build therapeutic centers, okay, and you force these people to go there. They have no right to do this. They break every law in the world.
That's for sure. They don't have the right to do it in public. Bill, we got to run, but I want to ask you one more question. One more question quickly about the media's duty to report the news accurately. There was a story yesterday in the Daily Mail that completely botched developments in the murder trial of the man accused of killing Charlie Kirk. Of course, this doesn't only violate public trust, journalistic ethics, but it also creates unhinged conspiracies and can actually interfere in a trial. Just wanted to get your response to that false headline.
Justice Department has looked at all of those conspiracies. They say there's nothing to any of them. There have always been penny dreadfuls. You know what a penny dreadful is, Katie?
I don't think I do. Educate me, Bill.
Okay. It's a tabloid sheet, and it originated in England, and they called them penny dreadfuls. We don't print anything.
Yes.
And I think the publication you just named falls into that category, along with a lot of other publications.
Yes,
Again,
indeed.
people believe what they want to believe.
Well, I think the facts in a murder trial are pretty important. Accuracy is crucial when it comes to a trial that has not happened yet. Bill O'Reilly, thank you for sharing your thoughts and spending some time with us on a variety of topics. We appreciate it. See you soon.
Thanks for having me.
Be sure to check out his special. It's called The Decline and Fall of San Francisco. You can watch it on the NewsNation YouTube channel. See you soon, Bill. Thanks.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.